Today, we're delving into the tragic case of the Candy family massacre. Imagine the absolute terror a 10-year-old boy must have felt waking up to find his entire family dead. His father, mother, and 3 older brothers were all gone, leaving him as the sole survivor. This heartbreaking and frightening story might make you question the safety of those you love most. The Candy family lived in a quiet neighborhood in Yukon, Oklahoma. Jonathan Candy, the father, worked part-time at the Paycom Center, a large arena used for concerts and sports events. He was known for his jokes and cheerful personality. His wife, Lindsay, was a loving mother who always had a smile on her face. They had 4 sons, Dylan, Ethan, Lucas, and the youngest, whose name has been withheld for privacy. To their friends and neighbors, the Candys seemed like the perfect family. They were active in their community, and their home was often filled with laughter. Jonathan and Lindsay appeared happily married, and their children seemed well-adjusted and happy. They even appeared on a local TV show, talking about their favorite bakery, showcasing their love for simple pleasures like breakfast burritos and carrot cake. But behind the closed doors of the Candy home, a dark and tragic story was unfolding. On the night of April 21st, 2024, something went terribly wrong. The next morning, the youngest son woke up, expecting a regular day. Instead, he found his entire family dead, lying in pools of blood. He had slept through the night with a box fan blowing in his room, drowning out any noise from the horrific events. At 9:30 a.m., the terrified 10-year-old called 911 and told the dispatcher that his entire family was dead. Police arrived quickly at the Candy home on Southwest 29th Street and Check Hall Road. What they found was nothing short of a nightmare. Jonathan had shot and killed his wife, Lindsay, and their 3 sons, 18-year-old Dylan, 14-year-old Ethan, and 12-year-old Lucas. After committing these terrible acts, Jonathan turned the gun on himself. The police concluded that it was a case of murder-suicide, but the question on everyone's mind was, why did this happen? Why did Jonathan, a man who was supposed to protect and care for his family, commit such a horrific act? And why did he spare his youngest son? Friends and neighbors were in shock. Jonathan was described as a loving father who always seemed happy. There were no signs of domestic violence or abuse. Lindsay was known for her laughter and cheerful nature. Their children were well-liked and active in their community. Dylan had just graduated from high school and was passionate about music, playing in his school's marching band. Ethan was an athletic young boy who loved baseball. Lucas was a bright, joyful child who loved to play outdoors. As investigators tried to piece together what happened, they looked into various possibilities. Was Jonathan facing financial problems? Did he have a hidden mental health issue? There were no clear answers, and the motive behind the murders remained a mystery. The darkest part of this story isn't just that the Candy family was murdered, but that the perpetrator was Jonathan Candy himself. Jonathan, the man who was supposed to love and protect his family, ended their lives and then took his own. This twist in the narrative makes the tragedy even more harrowing and difficult to understand. Jonathan was known by friends and neighbors as a loving father and husband. He was the type of person who would help you fix your car or lend you a tool. He was involved in community events, and his cheerful demeanor made him a well-liked figure in the neighborhood. To everyone around him, Jonathan seemed like the last person who could commit such a horrific act. Neighbors remember seeing Jonathan play with his kids in the yard, smiling and laughing, seemingly the perfect picture of a devoted father. His wife, Lindsay, was seen as his perfect match. She was equally friendly and loving, always ready to lend a helping hand or offer a kind word. Together they seemed like an ideal couple, raising their children in a happy, stable environment. This makes the crime even more incomprehensible. How could someone who appeared so devoted to his family commit such a brutal act? It's a question that has left the community grappling for answers. Friends and neighbors are struggling to reconcile the Jonathan they knew with the one who could commit such violence. Psychologists and investigators point out that this kind of tragedy often has deep, hidden roots. Jonathan may have been dealing with severe, untreated mental health issues. There might have been stressors or triggers that pushed him over the edge, but these remain unknown. The public sees only the aftermath, not the silent internal battles that led to it. The police quickly concluded that this was a murder-suicide. but the motive remains unclear. Why did Jonathan spare his youngest son? What drove him to such a horrific act? Investigators are looking into possible financial troubles or mental health issues that Jonathan might have been hiding. As soon as the tragic news broke, law enforcement launched a thorough investigation into the Candy family's massacre. Crime scene investigators meticulously combed through the house, looking for clues that could explain the unthinkable actions of Jonathan Candy. While the evidence pointed clearly to a murder-suicide, the underlying reasons for such an act remained shrouded in mystery. Detectives began by interviewing friends, family, and neighbors. They hoped to piece together a picture of Jonathan's mental state in the days leading up to the tragedy. Many described him as a devoted father and a loving husband, making his actions all the more baffling. However, some hinted at recent changes in his behavior, noting moments of uncharacteristic withdrawal and signs of stress. One of the major avenues of investigation was Jonathan's financial situation. Records revealed that the family had been facing mounting debts, which could have contributed to a sense of hopelessness and despair. Investigators considered whether the pressure of financial instability might have pushed Jonathan to a breaking point. Mental health was another critical factor under scrutiny. Although there were no formal diagnoses on record, the possibility that Jonathan was struggling with undiagnosed or untreated mental health issues loomed large. Experts suggested that severe depression or another mental illness could have distorted his thinking, leading him to see this violent act as the only escape from his perceived problems. The decision to spare his youngest son added another layer of complexity to the case. Psychologists involved in the investigation proposed several theories. One possibility was that Jonathan believed his youngest child still had a chance for a better life, or perhaps he felt a stronger emotional bond with him. This aspect of the case remains one of the most perplexing, leaving both investigators and the community searching for answers. As the investigation continued, police also looked into Jonathan's recent activities and interactions. They examined his digital footprint, including emails, social media posts, and search history for any signs of distress or plans for the crime. Despite these efforts, no clear motive emerged, leaving many questions unanswered. In the end, the investigation painted a picture of a man who outwardly seemed to have everything under control, but was likely battling severe inner turmoil. The Candy family's story serves as a grim reminder of the hidden struggles people may face and the tragic consequences when those struggles remain unaddressed. The youngest Candy child now faces a future without his immediate family. He has been placed in the care of extended family members, and the community is rallying to support him. Social workers and counselors are involved to provide the necessary emotional and psychological support. A GoFundMe campaign has been set up to assist with his future needs. The aftermath of the Candy family tragedy left the youngest son in an unimaginable position. At just 10 years old, he must now navigate a future without his parents and brothers. This young boy, whose name is withheld for privacy, was thrust into a reality that no child should ever have to face. Understanding the immense emotional burden he would carry, extended family members stepped in immediately to provide a safe and loving home. Recognizing the depth of his trauma, social workers and counselors were brought in to offer specialized care. These professionals are working closely with the family to ensure that he receives ongoing emotional and psychological support. They are helping him process his grief, understand his new reality, and begin the long journey toward healing. The community has shown incredible solidarity in these trying times. People from all walks of life have come together, offering their support in various ways. A GoFundMe campaign was quickly established to help with the boy's future needs. The response was overwhelming, with donations pouring in from friends, neighbors, and even strangers who were moved by the tragic story. This fund aims to cover his educational expenses, therapy costs, and any other needs he might have as he grows up. Local organizations and schools have also joined in the effort, creating support networks and providing resources to help him cope. The community's outpouring of love and support serves as a beacon of hope, showing that even in the darkest times, people can come together to lift each other up. The Candy family's friends and neighbors are struggling to process this tragedy. They remember Jonathan as a kind and helpful neighbor. Ethan's coach and friends are setting up a memorial bench to honor his memory. The community is deeply affected, and many are finding it hard to believe that such a tragedy could happen to such a seemingly happy family. In the quiet neighborhood where the Candy family lived, the news of their tragic deaths has left a deep scar. The shockwaves of the event have been felt far and wide, leaving friends, neighbors, and even casual acquaintances struggling to comprehend how such a horrific incident could happen. The Candys were seen as the epitome of a happy, loving family, which makes this tragedy even harder to understand. Jonathan Candy, the father, was known to his neighbors as a kind and helpful man. He was the type of person who would lend a hand without hesitation. Neighbors recall how he often helped with yard work or other small tasks around their homes. Brian Graham, a neighbor, mentioned how Jonathan was always ready to mow lawns or help with any household chores. He was dependable, friendly, and always seemed to have a smile on his face. This image of a helpful, caring neighbor stands in stark contrast to the horrifying actions that led to the family's demise, leaving many in disbelief. Lindsay Candy, the mother, was remembered by friends and neighbors as a cheerful and loving person. She was involved in the community and was known for her vibrant personality. She had a way of making everyone around her feel happy and welcome. Her laughter was contagious, and her positive energy was felt by all who knew her. Friends from her choir days fondly recall her joyful spirit and how she brought light to every room she entered. This vibrant life being cut short has left a void that is felt deeply by those who knew her. Their children were also well loved and active in the community. Dylan, the eldest, was passionate about music and was heavily involved in his school's marching band. He had just graduated from Mustang High School and was attending Oklahoma Baptist University, where he played in the Bison Brigade marching band. His band director, Brian Stackhouse, spoke of Dylan's big heart and how he always had a smile, even on rough days. The band is now setting up a memorial display with his drum and uniform to honor his memory. Ethan, the second son, was a talented athlete who played baseball with great enthusiasm. His coach, TJ Armstrong, remembered him as a very energetic and committed player who was always cheerful. Ethan's friends and teammates have been deeply affected by his loss. To honor his memory, they are setting up a memorial bench at the Mustang Youth Sports Complex. This bench will serve as a lasting tribute to Ethan's passion for the game and his joyful spirit. Lucas, the youngest victim, was known as a bright and joyful child who loved playing outdoors. He often accompanied his older brothers to their activities, spreading his own unique cheer wherever he went. The loss of such a young, vibrant life has left many in the community heartbroken. The community's response to this tragedy has been overwhelming. People have come together to support the youngest surviving Candy child, who now faces a future without his immediate family. Extended family members have taken him in, and the community is rallying around him, ensuring he receives the emotional and psychological support he needs. The tragedy of the Candy family has not only shocked the community, but also prompted important conversations about mental health. Authorities are using this case to highlight the critical importance of seeking help for mental health issues. It is a stark reminder that even those who appear happy and stable on the outside may be struggling internally with serious problems. In the aftermath of this horrific event, mental health professionals and community leaders are urging everyone to be more aware and compassionate. They emphasize that mental health is just as important as physical health, and that it's okay to seek help when needed. This tragedy shows how vital it is to pay attention to the well-being of those around us. The Candys were a family that seemed to have it all together. Jonathan was seen as a kind and helpful neighbor. Lindsay was remembered as cheerful and loving, and their children were active and well-liked. Yet beneath this seemingly perfect exterior, there were hidden struggles. The Candy family's story is a powerful reminder that appearances can be deceiving. As we wrap up this tragic story of the Candy family, we are left with more questions than answers. How could a loving father and husband be driven to such a dark place? What signs did we miss? And what could have been done to prevent this unimaginable tragedy? We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think this tragedy could have been prevented? What can we do as a community to support those who might be silently struggling? Let's start a conversation and ensure that no one else falls through the cracks. What would you do? if your safe and loving home turned into the scene of a terrible nightmare. Imagine a family, full of dreams and love, suddenly facing an unthinkable act of violence. This is the story of the most brutal family massacre in Canada. Today, we delve into a heartbreaking story of a family reunion that took a tragic turn. This is the tale of a family's dream for a better life, ending in a devastating loss. Let us explore this sorrowful event that shook a community and questioned the essence of hospitality. Imagine a family separated by distance for years, finally coming together with hopes and dreams of a bright future. They were filled with joy, looking forward to a new beginning in a land full of opportunities. However, their dreams were crushed by a tragic event that no one could have foreseen. In the peaceful suburb of Barrhaven, Ottawa, a shocking discovery was made late Wednesday night. Police found 6 people dead in a house, including 35-year-old Darani Delantha Ekanayake and her 4 young children. This tragedy struck a family that had recently reunited in Canada, carrying dreams of a brighter future. Their story began in Sri Lanka, where Danushka Vikramasinghe decided to move to Canada in July 2021. He aimed to pursue higher education and build a better life for his family. With determination and hope, Danushka started a cleaning company, working tirelessly to establish himself in his new country. After years of hard work, his efforts paid off, and he was finally able to bring his wife, Darani, and their 3 children to join him last summer. The family's reunion in Canada was filled with joy and anticipation. They were excited about the opportunities that awaited them in their new home. Soon after their arrival, they welcomed a new addition to their family, a baby girl named Kelly. The future seemed promising, and their happiness appeared to be complete. However, their journey took a tragic turn. The dreams they had built, the efforts they had put into creating a new life, were all shattered on that fateful night. The loss of Darani, their children, and the newborn baby girl left the community in shock and mourning. The peaceful life they had hoped for was tragically shattered on March 6, 2024. What was once a home filled with laughter and dreams became a scene of unimaginable horror. On that fateful night, the quiet suburb of Barrhaven was forever changed. Danushka Vikramasinghe, who had worked so hard to build a new life for his family, sustained serious injuries. His wife, Darani Delantha Ekanayake, their 4 young children, and a family friend, Gamini Amaran, were brutally murdered. This horrific event, marked by such senseless violence, stands as the worst mass killing in Ottawa's history. The Vikramasinghe family had come to Canada with hopes and dreams, seeking a better future in a land of opportunities. Their home, once a place of joy and new beginnings, was turned into a scene of terror and loss. The tragic deaths of Darani, her children and Gamini left the community in deep shock and mourning. Neighbors and friends remember the family as kind and hopeful, always striving for a better life. The children were full of life, and their laughter often filled the neighborhood. The community's sense of safety was deeply shaken by this tragedy, raising questions about the nature of security and the essence of hospitality. The perpetrator behind this horrific crime was Febrio Deoa, a 19-year-old Sri Lankan national. Febrio had been living with the Vikramasinghe family after being evicted from his previous accommodation. In an act of kindness, Danushka Vikramasinghe had offered him a place to stay, never imagining that this generosity would lead to such a tragic outcome. Febrio, who seemed like a young man in need of help, was welcomed into the Vikramasinghe home. Danushka and his family saw it as an opportunity to help someone from their homeland, reflecting their compassionate and hospitable nature. However, on that fateful night, this act of kindness turned into an unimaginable betrayal. On March 6, 2024, Danushka discovered Febrio in their home, armed with a knife. In a desperate attempt to protect his family, Danushka confronted Febrio. The confrontation quickly escalated, and Febrio attacked Danushka. Despite his efforts to defend his loved ones, Danushka was overpowered and seriously injured. The brutal violence that ensued led to the tragic deaths of Dharani Delantha Ikanayake, their 4 young children, and family friend Gamini Amaran. The community was left reeling from the shock and horror of the crime. Febrio Deoa was subsequently arrested and charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The charges reflect the severity and premeditated nature of the crime, highlighting the profound betrayal of the Wickramasinghe family's trust and generosity. The case against Febrio has brought to light the complexities of trust and the unforeseen dangers that can arise even in the most hospitable of environments. The community grapples with the senselessness of the violence, mourning the loss of innocent lives and questioning how such a tragedy could have been prevented. The loss of the Wickramasinghe family sent shockwaves through the entire community. This once close-knit, peaceful neighborhood in Ottawa was now overshadowed by grief and disbelief. Danushka's wife, Dharani, had been a former student and teacher, deeply cherished by her family and friends. Her sudden and tragic death left a void that words could hardly describe. Dharani's mother, still living in Sri Lanka, had a premonition of impending doom during their last conversation. Thousands of miles away, she sensed something was amiss with her daughter. When the tragic news reached her, it was the confirmation of her worst fears. The emotional toll on her, unable to be with her daughter and grandchildren in their final moments, was immense. The Wickramasinghe family was known for their kindness and generosity. They had extended their home to Febrio Deoa, the young man who ultimately betrayed them. This act of compassion was a testament to their character, reflecting the values they lived by. Friends and neighbors often spoke of how the family always lent a helping hand, whether it was offering support to new immigrants or participating in community activities. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the community rallied together, united in their grief and determination to honor the memories of Danushka, Dharani, and their children. Vigils were held, with hundreds of people gathering to light candles and share stories of the family's kindness. The local church, where the family was active, became a center for mourning and support. Efforts to support Danushka, who survived the attack but was left with both physical and emotional scars, began to take shape. Fundraisers were organized to help cover medical expenses and to provide some semblance of stability as he tried to navigate this unimaginable loss. The schools the children attended also paid tribute, setting up memorials and providing counseling services for students and staff. The children's friends, teachers and classmates were left to grapple with the sudden loss of their peers, trying to make sense of a world that now seemed a lot less safe. This devastating event has forever changed the community. It has brought people closer together, forging bonds through shared grief and a collective desire to prevent such tragedies in the future. The Wickramasinghe family's legacy of kindness continues to inspire those who knew them, serving as a poignant reminder of the enduring impact of generosity and compassion, even in the face of incomprehensible violence. The community's response to the tragedy was one of deep solidarity and unwavering support. As news of the horrific event spread, people from all corners of Ottawa came together to offer their condolences and assistance. A GoFundMe campaign was swiftly organized, and it quickly raised significant funds to help the surviving family members and cover the funeral expenses. The outpouring of financial support was a testament to the community's collective grief and desire to help in any way they could. Vigils were organized almost immediately, with hundreds of mourners gathering to light candles, lay flowers, and share their grief. These vigils provided a space for the community to come together, offering comfort to one another while remembering the lives lost. People shared stories and memories of the Wickramasinghe family, highlighting their kindness, generosity, and the positive impact they had on everyone around them. Funeral services for Dharani and her children were solemn and deeply emotional. Family, friends, and even strangers who had been touched by the tragedy attended to pay their respects. The services were filled with heartfelt tributes, emphasizing the love and warmth that Dharani and her children had brought into the lives of those who knew them. The family's landlord, who had been unaware of the additional occupant in the home, expressed profound shock and sorrow over the tragedy. He spoke about the Wickramasinghe family with great respect, recalling their friendly nature and the joy they brought to the neighborhood. The landlord's grief mirrored that of the wider community, underscoring the widespread impact of the loss. Local organizations and support groups also stepped in to offer their assistance. Counseling services were made available to help residents cope with the trauma, and community centers opened their doors for gatherings and support meetings. These efforts were crucial in helping people process their emotions and begin the healing process. The community's response went beyond immediate support. Discussions began about how to improve safety and support for new immigrants and vulnerable families, ensuring that such a tragedy would not happen again. Initiatives were proposed to provide better resources and assistance to those in need, fostering a safer and more supportive environment. In the wake of this unimaginable loss, the community's unity and compassion shone through. The Wickramasinghe family's legacy of kindness continued to inspire even in the darkest of times. The solidarity displayed by the community served as a powerful reminder of the strength and resilience that can emerge in the face of adversity. The legal process in the aftermath of this tragedy has begun, and it is shaping up to be lengthy and complex. Febrio Deoa, the young man accused of committing this horrific crime, now faces the weight of the legal system. The court is not only dealing with the severe charges against him, but also delving deeply into his mental state and background to understand the circumstances that led to such a brutal act. As the court proceedings unfold, Febrio's mental health is a focal point. Experts are being called in to evaluate his psychological state, trying to determine whether he was fully aware of his actions and their consequences. This aspect of the case is crucial, as it may influence the severity of his sentence and the type of facility where he may ultimately be placed. Febrio's family, who are grappling with shock and confusion, are also a significant part of the story. They are struggling to come to terms with the accusations against him and the devastating impact of his actions. Their pain is palpable, adding another layer of tragedy to this already heart-wrenching tale. They are seeking answers just as much as the victims' families and the community at large. Meanwhile, the community continues to mourn and support Danushka Wickramasinghe, the surviving father. Amidst the ongoing legal battles, the community's solidarity remains strong. They attend court hearings, offer emotional support to Danushka, and ensure that the family's story stays in the public eye, advocating for justice for the victims. Legal experts predict that the trial will be protracted, with many twists and turns. The complexity of the case, combined with the emotional weight it carries, means that each step in the process is closely watched by both the media and the community. People are looking for answers, justice, and perhaps some form of closure. Throughout this difficult time, Danushka's resilience is remarkable. Despite his immense grief, he has been a pillar of strength, attending every court session, speaking to the media, and ensuring that his family's story is heard. His courage in facing the legal proceedings head-on has been a source of inspiration to many. The legal proceedings are not just about punishing the perpetrator, but also about understanding how such a tragedy could happen and preventing it from happening again. As the court seeks to uncover the full story, the hope is that justice will be served and that this process will bring some measure of peace to all those affected by this terrible event. The story of the Wickramasinghe family is a stark reminder of how fragile life can be and how quickly everything can change. This family, like many others, had dreams of a brighter future. They left their homeland, Sri Lanka, with hopes and aspirations, seeking a better life in Canada. Danushka Wickramasinghe worked hard to establish himself and create a stable environment for his wife and children. Their journey was filled with hope and determination. But then, in a single tragic night, their dreams were shattered. The violent act that took the lives of Dharani, her children, and a family friend left a deep scar not only on their family, but also on the entire community. It was a reminder of how unpredictable and sometimes cruel life can be. The unimaginable violence that struck their home turned a place of love and laughter into a scene of horror and loss. As we reflect on the Wickramasinghe family's story, we're also reminded of the incredible strength and unity shown by the community in the face of such tragedy. The outpouring of support, the vigils, the fundraising efforts. All these acts of kindness highlight the power of compassion and solidarity. In times of immense grief, the community came together to support Danushka, showing that even in the darkest times, humanity can shine brightly. This story teaches us about the importance of empathy and kindness. It reminds us to cherish our loved ones and to offer help to those in need. The Wickramasinghe family's legacy is not just one of tragedy, but also one of the community's resilience and the collective effort to find healing and justice. As we remember this family, let us honor their memory by fostering a spirit of compassion and understanding in our own lives. Their story is a call to be vigilant and supportive of one another, to build stronger, more caring communities. Through their loss, we learn the value of standing together, helping one another, and striving to create a world where such tragedies become less likely. In conclusion, the Wickramasinghe family's dream was cut short by an unimaginable act of violence, but their legacy lives on through the community's response and the lessons we take from their story. Let us remember them by continuing to support those around us, embracing compassion, and working towards a future where kindness prevails. Today, we're exploring the heart-wrenching story of the Ortega family, whose joyful Christmas Eve turned into a nightmare. This is not just a story of tragedy, but a reflection on the fragility of life and the unexpected darkness that can strike even during our most cherished moments. On December 24th, 2008, the Ortega family gathered at their warm and welcoming home in Covina, California, to celebrate Christmas Eve. The house buzzed with holiday cheer, echoing with the laughter and voices of family members sharing a joyful evening together. The festive spirit was in full swing as Joseph Papa Joe Ortega and his wife Alice, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, enjoyed a lively game of Texas Hold'em in the cozy dining room. The table was a mix of playing cards, snacks and smiles, capturing the essence of a happy family moment. Outside, in the backyard, the younger kids were having their own fun. They played video games and splashed around near the pool, their giggles and excitement adding to the festive atmosphere. The night was one of those rare moments when everything seemed perfect. Upstairs, 17-year-old Michael was lost in his own world, typing away at his computer, perhaps chatting with friends or exploring the internet. The house was filled with warmth, love, and the magic of the holiday season. The family had just finished a delicious dinner and were enjoying the simplicity of being together, each moment treasured and every smile cherished. It was a peaceful, picture-perfect evening, the kind of night that makes lasting memories. But this tranquility and happiness were tragically short-lived. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the joyful celebrations were about to take a devastating turn. A knock at the front door shattered the serenity, setting off a chain of events that would forever change the lives of everyone inside. The knock that came was not just an interruption, it was the harbinger of unimaginable horror and heartbreak that no one could have anticipated. An 8-year-old girl, her face lighting up with joy, shouted, "Santa Claus! Santa Claus!" She rushed to the door, believing it was the jolly figure everyone loved. The anticipation was palpable as the door opened, revealing a man in a Santa suit. But the joy turned to horror in an instant. The man, Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, who was the ex-husband of Sylvia Ortega, one of Joseph and Alice's daughters, had come not to spread cheer, but to unleash terror. Pardo pulled out a gun from his red Santa suit, and without hesitation, shot the little girl in the face. The room erupted in screams and panic as family members, who had been basking in the warmth of the holiday spirit moments before, were suddenly thrown into a nightmare. As Pardo fired more shots, chaos engulfed the house. The family, trying desperately to protect one another, scattered in all directions. Some tried to shield the wounded, while others attempted to find safety amidst the chaos. The front of the house, once a scene of festive gatherings and hugs, became a place of unimaginable horror and desperation. Pardo's brutality did not end with the gunfire. He had brought with him a homemade flamethrower device, a tool of even greater destruction. In the midst of the chaos, he ignited it, and flames began to pour into the house. The once festive home was quickly engulfed in a raging inferno. The fire spread rapidly, fueled by the intensity of the device, and soon reached heights of 50 feet, towering over the house and lighting up the night sky. Trapped inside, many of the family members found themselves unable to escape the inferno. The thick smoke and intense heat made every corner of the house a perilous trap. Their beloved home, filled with memories and the sounds of laughter just moments before, was now a scene of devastation and despair. The fire's ferocity was so immense that it took a team of 80 firefighters over an hour and a half to finally bring it under control. By then, the damage was irreparable. As the flames roared, those outside could only watch in horror. Neighbors who had been drawn to the scene by the commotion stood helplessly. Their festive evening turned into a night of shock and sorrow. Inside the house, the heroic efforts of the family members to save each other were overshadowed by the sheer scale of the disaster. The flames and smoke obscured everything, leaving behind a trail of heartache and loss. The terrifying events of that night were a stark contrast to the holiday joy that had filled the Ortega home. What began as a celebration of family and togetherness ended in unimaginable tragedy, forever altering the lives of those who survived and the community that surrounded them. Once the flames were finally extinguished, what remained was a scene of utter destruction. The home's structure, filled with holiday decorations and the warmth of family moments just hours before, was now unrecognizable. The heat had been so intense that parts of the house had melted and charred beyond recognition. For the firefighters and first responders, the immediate concern was the horrifying task of locating and identifying the victims. Inside the ruins, the firefighters discovered a grim scene. The bodies of Joseph Papa Joe Ortega, his beloved wife Alice, and several of their children and grandchildren were scattered throughout the wreckage. In total, 9 members of the Ortega family had perished in the tragic events of that night. The flames had been so ferocious that the remains of the victims were severely damaged, making visual identification impossible. Faced with this daunting challenge, authorities had to rely on more technical means to identify the victims. Dental records became a crucial tool. Each victim's dental X-rays were meticulously compared to the records they had on file. This process, though painstaking, provided a way to piece together the identities of those who had lost their lives. Alongside dental records, medical clues such as scars, unique physical features, and any available medical history were used to confirm who the victims were. This somber task weighed heavily on the authorities and the community alike. The realization that so many lives had been lost in such a senseless and brutal manner cast a long shadow over the town of Covina. The once cheerful and close-knit Ortega family had been shattered, and the community was left grappling with an overwhelming sense of loss and grief. For the surviving members of the Ortega family and the local community, the fire's aftermath was a period of profound sorrow and reflection. Neighbors and friends who had known the family for years were left in shock, struggling to comprehend the scale of the tragedy that had unfolded in their midst. Memorials and vigils sprang up as the community came together to mourn and remember the lives that had been lost. As investigators sifted through the debris, they found themselves piecing together not only the physical remnants of the fire, but also the shattered lives of those affected. The heart-wrenching discovery of each family member brought waves of sorrow as the full impact of the tragedy became painfully clear. The fire had not only destroyed a home, it had decimated a family and left an indelible mark on the community. In the weeks and months that followed, the authorities continued their meticulous work, ensuring that each victim was respectfully identified and honored. The resilience and determination of the investigators to bring some measure of closure to the grieving family members and friends were a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable loss. Through it all, the memory of the Ortega family and the joyous celebration they had planned for that night remained etched in the hearts of everyone who knew them. The fire's aftermath was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring impact of love and community in times of profound sorrow. Bruce Jeffrey Pardo appeared to many as just an ordinary man, But beneath his seemingly calm exterior lurked deep-seated rage and bitterness. Pardo's recent divorce from Sylvia Ortega, a member of the close-knit Ortega family, had left him devastated and consumed by anger. The dissolution of their marriage was not just a personal failure to him. It was a catalyst that ignited a dark and twisted plan for revenge. Pardo's behavior during his marriage to Sylvia had been controlling and obsessive. As their relationship deteriorated, his actions became more erratic and threatening. After their divorce was finalized, Pardo's emotions spiraled out of control. Unable to cope with the loss and perceived humiliation, he began to meticulously plan a horrific attack on the family he once knew. Over the months leading up to that fateful Christmas Eve, Pardo prepared with chilling precision. He didn't just act on impulse. Every step was calculated. He started by purchasing a Santa suit, a symbol of joy and innocence that he would grotesquely twist to serve his dark purposes. This disguise was intended to deceive the unsuspecting family and allow him to get close to them before unleashing his wrath. Pardo also armed himself heavily. He bought multiple firearms, including semi-automatic handguns and stockpiled ammunition. But his preparation didn't stop there. Pardo constructed a homemade flamethrower, a device he would later use to set the Ortega home ablaze, ensuring maximum destruction. He meticulously planned his escape too, renting 2 cars, one for the attack and another to aid his getaway. Despite his careful planning, Pardo's plot had fatal flaws. As he set the house on fire with the flamethrower, he didn't anticipate the backdraft and the ensuing flames that would engulf him as well. Suffering from severe burns, his plan quickly unraveled. In excruciating pain and unable to continue with his escape, he abandoned his carefully laid plans. Covered in burns and his Santa suit in tatters, Pardo drove to his brother's house in Silmar, where he ultimately took his own life with a gunshot, bringing his reign of terror to a self-inflicted end. The aftermath of the massacre revealed the extent of Bruce Pardo's preparations and the depth of his twisted intentions. As investigators delved into his background and searched his home, they uncovered a shocking array of weapons and explosive materials. Pardo's house was like an arsenal, filled with additional firearms and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. This cache suggested that he had planned for an even greater level of violence than what had tragically transpired. One of the most alarming discoveries was the rental car parked near the Ortega home. This vehicle was rigged with a homemade explosive device set to detonate if tampered with. It was a final sinister touch that highlighted Pardo's intent to cause further devastation even after he had left the scene. Authorities had to handle the car with extreme caution, defusing the bomb to prevent further loss of life. Friends and acquaintances of Pardo were stunned by the revelations. Outwardly, he had seemed like a friendly, if somewhat reserved, individual. He had once been a valued employee and was known for his intelligence and technical skills. However, beneath this veneer of normalcy, Pardo harbored deep resentments and violent fantasies that he kept hidden from those around him. His attack on the Ortega family was the horrifying culmination of these internal demons and his inability to accept his personal failures. As the investigation continued, it became clear that Pardo had been driven by a combination of personal grievances and an unrelenting desire for revenge. His actions were a shocking manifestation of his internal turmoil and his determination to punish those he blamed for his perceived misfortunes. The tragic events of that night were not just a family's nightmare. They were a stark reminder of how deeply hidden resentments can erupt into unimaginable violence. In the quiet town of Covina, the memory of Bruce Pardo's attack and the loss of 9 members of the Ortega family would leave an indelible scar. The community grappled with the senselessness of the violence and the devastating impact it had on their collective sense of safety and trust. The Covina massacre serves as a haunting reminder of how quickly joy can turn to sorrow. It is a story of unimaginable loss, but also of incredible resilience. The strength of the Ortega family in the face of such tragedy is a testament to the power of love and the human spirit's ability to overcome even the darkest moments. Thank you for joining us on this journey through a deeply moving and tragic event. If you have thoughts on this case or want to hear more stories like this, please share your comments below. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.